Going on, everybody? Welcome to Lineman Life Podcast. Apologize for the late start. We had a pretty long live stream yesterday over at Geeks and Gamers following the premiere of the latest Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. And for those of you who don't know, I am a huge Star Wars fan. And, for me, being a part of that stream was big because obviously it's the last video in Star Wars or last movie in the Star Wars saga. And it was a doozy. So that was about a 6-hour stream. We got through it. That kind of backed me up a little bit today. But we are here to talk football. And for everybody who I'm sure is aware, something big happened last night with the New Orleans Saints, as Drew Brees is now the NFL's all-time leader in touchdown passes, passing Peyton Manning. And this is big for me personally for the simple reason that Drew Brees, Purdue alumni, same as myself, huge accomplishment for a quarterback of his caliber. And that is just another check mark on the great representation that Purdue University has in the NFL. And as you can see here, we have the man of steel, Drew Brees, the NFL's all-time leader in touchdown passes, passing yards, completions, and completion percentage. So that is huge for the NFL. That is huge for Drew Brees, obviously. And he had some emotional moments when that happened last night. And he also he actually had a few accomplishments that he actually got along. He actually did improved his completion percentage from, I think it was 73% last year to now 75%. But he breaks Peyton Manning's all-time passing record. That's huge. And I am a big-time Purdue guy. So that's just another achievement to add to our list, along with putting the first man on the moon. So just hope that everybody can actually, comprehend and let that sink in a little bit, because Drew Brees is obviously going down as, one of the all-time greats. I think after guys like Tom Brady, you definitely have to name Drew Brees in the same breath, in the same sentence. Obviously not as many Super Bowls, but definitely one of the GOATs of the NFL. So big kudos out to the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees. Obviously, they won their game against the Colts on Monday Night Football. I hate the Colts. So the irony that a Purdue Boilermaker beat the Indianapolis Colts, who are the Jaguars' arch nemesis, that is a huge thing for me. Now, let's just kind of get into some of the noteworthy things in the NFL. Now, for those of you who don't know, I do a lot of videos on Antonio Brown, a lot of videos on the drama that Antonio Brown has perpetrated in the game this season, starting with him leaving Pittsburgh, going over to Oakland, and then, completely blowing off Oakland, causing all kinds of drama in there to get himself out of Oakland, which was all something that was planned as far as I'm concerned with Antonio Brown. And now we are hearing that Antonio Brown may be looking at a multi-game suspension from the NFL based on the investigation that they did into his situation with the allegations of sexual assault that have been filed against him in court. But it's saying here, and this is coming from Bleacher Report Gridiron and Mike Freeman from the NFL, several sources around the league believe the NFL will suspend AB for at least 6 games. Others believe the punishment could span the entire season. This is not surprising for me, not surprising. You look at what this guy has been, you look at the way that he's acted, he hasn't garnered any kind of rapport from the league in the last, however many weeks of the season. And this guy has not really shown the stability mentally for any logical person to think that this guy has a shot of playing again this season. Last week he went on a little Twitter tirade, and he went from bringing up the accusations against other players, other people in the league and things they've done, to apologizing, to then having a big pity party about how the NFL has mistreated him and is being unfair to him, and the NFLPA and his agent are just standing by and watching. But look, Antonio Brown, I mean, we talk about things, sometimes we get serious here about things like CTE, but I really feel like, a lot of this has to do with his ego. A lot of this has to do with his inability to face any kind of reality in his life in terms of the consequences that he has to deal with right now based on, the accusations he's being, that are being dealt against him. He has, just kind of put himself in the space of a victim, and then he's tried to run with that. And I really feel like that's just not something that anybody can really back you up on when you've cried wolf so many times, when you've done things like try to intimidate people, for making any kind of accusations against you. This guy's really just put himself in a bad spot, and he hasn't really figured out a way to nobody who's in his nobody who's on his team has figured out a way to get him to just shut up, get off social media. That's something that I really want to talk about today as well, is just this whole situation with players who are on social media, and they're making fools of themselves, going on social media and getting into arguments with fans, insulting fans, making threats to people. It's hard for me to understand it, mainly because we're trained on this stuff. As young players, you're trained. We have people and experts who come in and talk to us during training camp who explain that you just cannot go online and social media and just say whatever you want, not just because it's something that could potentially, harm your reputation with the fans, but also because you're really putting the team in a position where they have to decide whether or not that you are worth the trouble, when it can affect things like ticket sales. It can affect the relationship that the team has with its city. And you look at Janoris Jenkins' situation, you look at Jermaine Whitehead's situation. These are guys who for lack of a better term, let the hood come out of them. And it really put them in a bad situation. It lost both of them their jobs. Now, Janoris Jenkins and Jermaine Whitehead have both signed with new teams. Janoris Jenkins, I believe, is being picked up. I can't remember which team it was picking him up, but I believe he's being picked up since he was waived by the Giants. But it just goes to speak to a trend that is kind of becoming a little bit more of an issue than I think most people would have intended or expected. And Mike Jackson says here in the chat, is this behavior consistent or has it gotten worse over the years? And, we're speaking specifically about the behavior of players on social media. Now, I think it's a little bit complicated. I think that part of it can be attributed to what's going on in the NBA, because the NBA's the way the NBA is working right now, players have a lot of leeway to voice their opinions, to to speak openly and freely with the fans about management, about coaching, about all these different things. And that culture in basketball is far more acceptable. And, and to be honest, they have been far more responsible with how they handle their use of social media when it comes to speaking out as a member of a particular team. Now, in the NFL, it's different. In the NFL, it's not, so much players speaking out. It's not so much players, voicing their opinion. It's players getting into altercations online with members of their own fan base. It's not even about, so much the player representing the team as it is also the player kind of diminishing their own reputation within fan bases. They don't realize you got these people in these cities for these teams who look up to you, people who hang on to your every word, and a lot of times would love nothing more than to have a nice, simple conversation, even at this smallest level in social media. They would like to have a conversation with the players that they follow on a weekly basis. And when they get the opportunity to reach out and to communicate via social media, players, and I'm not going to say, oh, this is a very small amount. But again, like we all know, one bad apple ruins the bunch. But players are taking those opportunities and they're hustling backwards. They're insulting fans. They're threatening media. They're threatening fans. And it's like, how do you expect a team to deal with you when you're erratic, when you're unpredictable, when you're a loose cannon online? One of the things that we're always told after we come out of a football game, good, bad, or indifferent, take 10 to 15 minutes to decompress your mind, because the media will come in to speak 10 to 15 minutes after the end of a game. And regardless of how you feel, you have to be of a level, sound mind to give them, to speak with them and answer questions. And some questions will be pointed questions, and some questions will be questions that are, set up questions to see if you're willing to give more information. Sometimes they're trying to get an opinion on another player, and they'll have leading questions to try and pull you in. And I really feel like, that kind of mentality is the same thing that needs to be taken into the social media realm. Before you get on social media, give yourself a minute to actually analyze what it is you want to say. I think that's big in terms of being able to have these comments and speak with your fan base in a coherent and in an appropriate manner. When you look at what happened with Jermaine Whitehead, like, he threatened a reporter, he threatened to shoot people, he threatened to whoop people, and I mean, he had a bad game prior to that. But what was the first thing he did when he got off the bus, or when he got on the bus after a bad game? He got on social media, which any person who is being logical knows that's probably the last place you want to go when it comes to, post-game interactions. You don't want to go to social media. One, you are not in the right mind state. If you just had a terrible game, if I go out there and I give up, 3 sacks in a game and got 3 whole, I actually had a game when I was in Jacksonville. We were playing against Tampa Bay. This was a pretty big game for Maurice Jones-Drew. He did some amazing things in this game. And, for me, I was having an amazing season as a lineman up to this point. This is later in the season. I think we were like week 13, week 14. And I'll never forget this game. This is one game that sticks in my mind throughout my entire career. This is one of the few games that sticks in my mind for all the wrong reasons. 3 holding calls, 3 holding calls in 2 drives. 2 of those 3 holding calls, I knew I was holding. I got beat on a pass rush, and I was just not going to let him hit the quarterback. I was going to take that hold. And it was in a crucial situation, a 3rd down situation, and I hurt my team. Then I had another holding on, if I'm not mistaken, I had another holding on a touchdown run from Maurice Jones-Drew. I thought that one was a little bit iffy, but I tried to get away with one. I held him a little bit longer than I should have, but I tried to do it in a subtle way so it didn't look like he was losing, like I was stopping him from moving. But the ref saw it, and it's funny because that ref was a ref that that had worked so many of our games, and he knew me, and he knew that I wasn't the guy that gets all the penalties. But he came up to me after that play. He's like, "Hey man, I know you're not that guy, but I couldn't let that one go. You had a good grip on him. But when he tried to disengage, you gave him a little tug back, and it made his shoulder turn backwards. It made his shoulders turn inward from where he was trying to move. I had to call it. So wasn't that I was that kind of guy who holds, but that was one that he had to call. And the third one was I think was on a screen. And it just wasn't, it was a bad game for me. It was a bad game. After the game, we won the game, but we won, but I was still in a shitty mood because, I didn't play up to par for my expectations. And I felt really bad about it. I felt really irritated about the way I played. But the last thing I thought about doing was going online to check and see what people were saying about how I played, because only thing that's going to do is create more anxiety, more irritability. And that's the perfect scenario for me to think, okay, I'm about to respond to this comment because I don't like how this person is talking about me. That's the last thing you want to do when you're in a situation where you had a bad game. Jermaine Whitehead knew he had a bad game, and he goes online immediately after the game and starts to respond to comments that people had about his effort, comments that people had about his play. And, we all see where that landed him. That landed him getting fired the very next day because he let his emotions take over, and he started threatening and berating, members of the fan base and members of the media. And that's just not something that you're going to be able to get away with. I think that it's getting a little bit loose with the players in the NFL who are going on to social media and just taking on fans. You just don't want to do that. So, for me, looking at that, I really feel like Antonio Brown's situation, coming back to it, is just really it's unfortunate, obviously, because of the talent that this guy has. But at the same time, he has dug his bed. He's dug his bed, or he has made his bed. Now he needs to lay in it. And he's dug himself into a hole as a player. There's no denying the talent. But this guy has absolutely made himself look the fool. He's made himself look the fool, and now he's probably not going to be making it back this season. I'm looking here in the chat, and Mr. Cody, yes, he says here, please tell me your thoughts on the grievance situation with the Jaguars. Now, this is a new story that just broke. The NFLPA. Let me pull it up here. The NFLPA has actually come out with a statement regarding the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think this is a very pointed statement. I think that this is a very damaging statement to the reputation of the Jaguars. And I'll explain why here in a moment. Let me pull this thing up. Let me share it with you guys so you guys can take a look at it. Mr. Cody, appreciate that chat, man. Let me pull this up real quick so you guys can take a look at it. right. So, there's a little bit of history behind this. But I'll read it out for you guys so you guys can kind of hear it. It's basically a grievance that was filed by the NFLPA against Jacksonville because of excessive fines that were administered to players who were reportedly told that they were under a mandatory order to receive treatment during the offseason. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to try and read through this quick. It says, in a recent decision from a grievance filed by our union, an arbiter affirmed that under the CBA, clubs cannot require rehabilitation or medical appointments at team facilities during the offseason and pre-training camp period. Historically, our union has fought hard to secure broad freedoms for players after the season ends. For that reason, the CBA limits what a club may require of players during the offseason. Despite this, the Jacksonville Jaguars recently decided that they would require injured players to get all offseason rehabs at the Jaguar facility. When players failed to attend these mandatory offseason rehab sessions in Jacksonville, they were disciplined by the club. In response, NFLPA filed a grievance challenging the club's right to discipline a player in those circumstances. For example, during the 2018 offseason program, the Jaguars fined a player 25 times for missing mandatory appointments with a club trainer or physician. All told, the player was fined over $700,000 for missing offseason appointments. I mean, that is absurd. Absolutely absurd. This is just one of many grievances we had to file to protect our players from the Jaguars' actions. That is, to me, a pretty damning statement right there. But let's continue. The jointly appointed arbiter rejected the Jaguars' arguments that they had a right to fine a player for not rehabbing at the club facility, which is utter nonsense. He held that, with limited exceptions, offseason activities are strictly voluntary, and no club can make those activities mandatory. The decision puts a stop to blatant overreach by the Jaguars and emphasizes the voluntary nature of almost all activities during the offseason. It should be noted the Jaguars players continue to be at odds with Jaguars management over their rights under the CBA far more than players on other clubs. In the last 2 years, more than 25% of the grievances filed by players in the entire league have been filed against the Jaguars. You as a player may want to consider this when you have a chance to select your next club. Wow. That is a very pointed last sentence. You as a player may want to consider this when you have a chance to select your next club. So, in a nutshell, the Jaguars are tripping. The Jaguars are breaking rules. And if you're a player who's a free agent, if you're a player who has an opportunity to sign with another team, be careful. You may want to stay away from Jacksonville. And this is damaging to the program. This is damaging to the Jaguars. And I put this on Tom Coughlin. They need to get rid of Tom Coughlin. Let's be real. Tom Coughlin, I have kind of my mentality when it comes to players like Tom Coughlin. I mean, not players, I'm sorry. When it comes to front office guys like Tom Coughlin, this guy was brought back to Jacksonville mainly because of the success he had with Jacksonville in its, as a new franchise in the NFL. We all know, the situation. Most people know Jaguars started their first few seasons in the NFL. Is one of the best teams in the NFL. They made it to the AFC Championship. Almost got to the Super Bowl. Denver Broncos stopped that, but the Jaguars, as a player, as somebody who played their entire career there, the Jaguars honestly have had problems with front office management since day one. There hasn't been consistency in that front office since my rookie year. That was in 2007. And this statement from the NFLPA, obviously represents the players. And for 25%, more than 25% of the grievances filed by players in the entire league, for that to be filed against one team, to have one team have a quarter of the grievances filed against them, that is a clear and direct indicator that the front office in Jacksonville is skirting the rules of the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. And, I look at this situation, and again, it comes back to a guy like Tom Coughlin, who is of that old school mentality that you're going to do things the way that they want. And it is strictly a employer boss relationship. There is no gray area. They can make whatever requirements they want, and you are going to follow them as the employee, or you're going to suffer their wrath. What sense does it make to fine a guy over $700,000 because you put an illegal requirement based on the CBA, and a requirement that is clearly breaking the rules? You put an illegal requirement on this guy that he had to stay in Jacksonville to do rehab after, maybe a surgery to fix an injury after the season ended. These guys fined him $700,000. I think this just gives more credibility to what Jalen Ramsey was going through in Jacksonville. And with this information coming out, I actually give Jalen a little bit more credit. I give him a little bit more credit based on the fact that he at least, he held his tongue and didn't go into much detail other than he felt like he was being disrespected by the front office. And I think when you say disrespected by the front office, you're speaking more about disrespected by Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin came back to Jacksonville and was handed the keys to the kingdom by Shad Khan. And I think that was a mistake. I think that they gave this guy this kind of power. And with his mentality coming back to Jacksonville, his mentality was, I'm going to rule this franchise with an iron fist. And with the results that they had early in his tenure, getting to the AFC title game, that only emboldened him to take it a step further and then skirt the rules of the NFL. And, that lack of control, that lack of respect towards the players based on an agreement that the NFL and the players union have, shows just how off base Tom Coughlin is as a director of player personnel, a GM, whatever you want to call him. His style does not fit in the NFL anymore. That style definitely is not a style that is conducive to a productive, successful franchise. And we're seeing that. He's not a player's coach. And I'm not saying that you have to necessarily be a player's coach to be successful in the league. I'm saying that if you can't modernize your style based on the environment you're in, you have no business being in the franchise. And again, I feel like Jalen Ramsey should be a little vindicated by this. And I had my own qualms with Jalen Ramsey and how he handled this situation. But I'll say at this point, I feel like he was more in the right than in the wrong. You have a head of operations who is, lightweight, out of control. And the NFLPA has had to step in. And now the NFLPA is warning players to stay away from Jacksonville. In a nutshell, they're saying, don't go to Jacksonville. Jacksonville is not the kind of franchise at the moment that is conducive to a productive, successful football franchise because of how they're managing their players. I think that Shad Khan has to take a look at this. I think that Shad Khan has to I think that he really has to make a decision on whether or not he's going to keep this cat, because, look at the way that their season is played out. And you can point directly to the trading of Jalen Ramsey and say this was the point when their season was going from shaky to falling off the cliff, because they were a competitive squad still. They were still competitive with Jalen Ramsey, even though they obviously had lost Nick Foles. They were having struggles, but they weren't out of the picture. They were still competing and still pushing to stay in the division race. But I mean, you got to look at this, and from the outside looking in, you can only come to the conclusion that Tom Coughlin is deteriorating and having a clearly negative effect on the franchise. And you got to kind of purge that out, because you're not going to be able to sign anybody in free agency, because now, I mean, it's on paper now. The PA's telling guys don't go to Jacksonville. It's telling guys not to go there. And again, when you come in with that style, Tom Coughlin took that style to New York, and they shut him down pretty quick. Tom Coughlin took that style to New York, and they told him, Michael Strahan told them, you got to cut it out, or you're going to lose everybody. And that was as a head coach, because this is not, it's just not the same NFL as it was in 1996. You can't come into a team with this dictator mentality and expect that players are going to be receptive of that. And you look at some of the responses here. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. 25% of all player grievances filed are filed against the Jags, an insane piece of data, if true. Look at another one. Good enough reason to kick Coughlin into retirement already, let alone his other failings with the players, the team, and the coaches. Get Tomlin the F out of here like today. And I think, again, the sentiment is similar among what appears to be the fan base in Jacksonville. They don't like what Coughlin is doing. They don't appreciate that. And there's a history of it to a certain extent, but not in the way that we're seeing with Tom Coughlin at the helm. I remember, there are teams that go through these kind of things at times, but I remember, and this is when I was playing in Jacksonville, I remember the first year of the new CBA, and this was during OTA workouts. Jack Del Rio was the head coach, and it was still kind of a feeling out time in terms of how things were going to work with the new CBA. But we knew that the rules were stated, that there was a new format to workouts in the offseason being voluntary. There was a new format in regards to what you could do in workouts, how long those workouts could go, and what the consequences were if you broke those rules. So obviously everything is voluntary leading up to the mandatory mini camp and leading up to training camp. Everything in between those are voluntary. For us this year, we were in the middle of OTAs, as I remember it, and you're not supposed to do one-on-one pass rush. One-on-one pass rush is not allowed because that is too physical a drill to do without pads on. And while in Jacksonville, I'll never forget it, because one of our this old line, this was what was happening. We were doing one-on-one pass rush with the D line during our OTA practices, and we're like, maybe 2 or 3 OTA practices in, we're doing one-on-one pass rush, conditioning, and the practices were actually going over the limit that the NFL had set because of the CBA. These practices were going for 20, 30, 40 minutes longer than what was allowed. Now, our player rep, every team has a player rep who is a direct connection to the NFLPA for these reasons, to file any kind of grievances against the team through the PA. And I'll never forget, one of our offensive linemen, Jordan Black, Jordan was our guy. And he reported it. He reported it to the PA, and the PA reported it to the NFL. So they sent people down. They got our film from those practices. They reviewed the film, reviewed the length of the practices, reviewed the drills of the practices, and they shut down our entire OTAs. And, obviously for players, we're kind of like, hell yeah. We only did like 3 OTA practices out of what's supposed to be like a month of OTA. So so we only did the first week of OTA practices. And for the next 3 weeks, our OTAs were shut down. And once that happens in the NFL, once the PA files that grievance with the NFL, and the NFL, follows the rules and shuts down the OTAs, which are the organized team activities, you are not allowed to even be at the facilities. If you're not doing rehab, you are not allowed at the facilities. You're not allowed to talk to any coaches about football. You're not allowed to even go out there with your own teammates and throw the ball around, period. It's a total shutdown because of the breaking of the rules. So, the NFL shut down our OTAs. Obviously, coaches not happy about it, but hey, you guys broke the rules, and we reported it because it was outlandish. We're in practice, in an OTA practice, for almost 3 hours, which is ridiculous. You're only allotted a certain number of hours total for the practices. You're only allotted a certain number of days that you can do it, and we were breaking those rules. So, with all that being said, and of course, this is the unfortunate part about it. The NFL, our team, the Jags, ended up finding out that it was Jordan Black, and they ended up releasing him. They ended up releasing him once they found out that he was the one who filed the grievance with the NFLPA, which is, again, that's another problematic issue that we had with the Jags. But and we weren't the only team that had broken some rules that offseason. And there were other teams, and there's always a team or two every few seasons that gets their OTA shut down because of that. And in this situation, it was handled accordingly by the NFL. And we got 3 more weeks of vacation time before training camp, so that was pretty good for us. But yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, the Jaguars are a mess right now. The Jaguars are a real mess, and it's their own fault as far as I'm concerned. I really feel like the mismanagement of the franchise and the things that have pushed players away have just become a bit much. And now you're seeing another reason why teams just don't go to Jacksonville. It's crazy. But let's take a look at the chat here. Justin Kelly, aka Pokemak, says, "What is an off-season workout?" Off-season workout is basically once the season ends. And I think the date usually is around April. I think April 14th, April 24th, something like that. That's the beginning of the off-season workout schedule in the NFL. It's basically voluntary time where you go and you work out with the team at the facilities, and it just consists of regular weight training, strength conditioning, and then at a certain point you have OTAs, which are organized team activities. That's where the team actually comes together and works drills, whether it be, it's kind of modified practices, shorter versions, no pads, only wearing a helmet, jersey, and you go through, shorter practice, shorter, abbreviated practices that just to kind of refamiliarize yourself with the schedule and with the routines of football until you go into training camp. And training camp usually starts at the end of July or beginning of August based on what the teams decide to do with their scheduling. But generally, it starts right at the end of July. Just speaking of the Jaguars, there's the whole situation with Gardner Minshew. What is going to be his situation going into 2020? I think right now they're going to try and get a good feel for Minshew and evaluate him going into the next season. But I'm coming around to him. It's hard to just ditch Nick Foles because the guy hasn't necessarily had enough time to really get into any kind of rhythm. The guy has only played in 4 games this season, and coming off of that collarbone injury again in the opening week against the Chiefs, the guy's just not had the opportunity to get into the season. So I can understand where right now, where they're at right now and wanting Minshew to finish out the season because he's played more games. He's been in there. He has more familiarity with the players. The players seem to be behind him, but also at the same time, I feel like before they really make a true decision on what they're going to do, they're going to have to battle it out in training camp next year. And we'll find out who the starter is going to be at that point based on their play in training camp. So, again, love the franchise when I was there, recognize its flaws, but, it seems like they're just making a lot of the same mistakes and how that Jaguars franchise is trying to push past and evolve into their next into the next situation. Mike Jackson says here Jalen is completely vindicated and even looks better for not losing his cool totally. Yeah, I agree 100%. There were questions as to what his motives were initially when he was having real friction after that Houston game and getting into a little spat with Doug Marrone. But let's be real, like he knew more than we did, and from what we can tell, based on all the information we have now, he was right. He was definitely right that the organization is not respectful to the players, and and he wanted out, and I can't blame him for that at all. So, taking a look at the power rankings here, and man, I mean, it was a wild weekend, right? I mean, you have a ton of teams kind of, you had the 49ers dropping their game against who'd they play against? Dang it, I'm trying to pull it up here. Let's see. Oops. Oh, crap. Hold on, folks. Lost it. There we go. So power rankings are out, at least from Bleacher Report, and they got the Ravens at number 1, Kansas City at 2, Seattle at 3, Niners falling down to 4th, and then you got the Saints at 5. I think the Saints are dangerous right now. I mean, they're streaking. They're looking good. Niners, big loss. Who'd they lose to? Anybody got that info there on who they lost their game to? Let me look. Let me take a quick look. Chargers. They lost that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Not Chargers. Falcons. They lost to the Falcons. That's a big loss. Yeah, that is a big loss for for the Niners. It just looks like teams are really, other than the Ravens, and we see the streaking Saints. Other than those two teams, just feels like there hasn't been another that second team to really put a clinch on their positioning as the Super Bowl contender. But for me, again, I feel like the undisputed top of the food chain right now is indeed the Baltimore Ravens. What Lamar Jackson is doing, just an all-time season performance, obviously breaking Michael Vick's record for most rushing yards by a quarterback in a single season. It's a sight to behold, to be honest. And, my hat's off to him. I really feel like the guy has put in the work. I really feel like he's improved as a player by, buying into what his coaches want him to do. And the coaches have had the wherewithal and the foresight to actually evolve as coaches based on the talent that they have in front of them. I think that says a lot about the coaching staff in Baltimore, that they are able to adjust themselves and redesign how their offense works based on the kind of talent that they have at their disposal, instead of trying to force him to fit into any kind of particular mold. And that is, again, just the mark of a really good coaching staff. So we'll see how this season ends, but December is the month to remember. That's the month where you can solidify your team's positioning with playoff seeding, and it's the month where you can build momentum going into the playoffs. So definitely, it's a good situation for the Ravens. Everybody else is just fighting for what's left over. Now let's turn our attention to another, obviously, crazy situation in the NFL. Once again, we are talking about the New England Patriots cheating habits. And, I don't know if there's any huge New England fans in the audience right now, but my goodness, and I'm pulling it up here right now, but my goodness, these New England Patriots are off the chain, and I feel like when you talk about these Patriots and you talk about the greatness that the Patriots have had, it doesn't come without its asterisks. And a lot of that has to do with this video right here. I'm going to share the screen. Let's see here. A lot of it has to do with this. I am going to fast forward to the good part. And first of all, see right here. Right now, we have exclusive footage. This is coming from Jay Glazier. And you see right here, and you look at this. And you see what the Patriots are out here doing. There's actually 8 minutes of it on the tape, but this is where things take a turn for the Patriots. Mike Jackson, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Yeah. Come on, guys. I don't see the advanced scout in this footage. No, that's not. We were trying to get some field perspective behind that. Why you would think you could take that? I didn't know. How do you but I can believe this right here for you. And that is the part that, to me, is most damning. They're trying to Ah. Let me know if you guys can't hear that, but this guy's trying to bargain his way out. He's in a little bit of a panic. So, I know you guys have all seen this. I think we all have seen the footage, but New England Patriots, once again, questionable tactics and how they are scouting and preparing for teams that they play against. Now, this is obviously against the Bengals, and a lot of people will say, well, it's the Bengals. But no, that's not the point. The point is they have evolved the way that they do things in order to gain an advantage over teams in the NFL. In my opinion, this is a clear-cut situation of, gaming and cheating the system that the NFL has in place to try and keep the playing field level for all teams and their ability to prepare and scout for their opponents. And, the Patriots are getting caught here. But we all know that this isn't the first time, and it probably won't be the last. But the NFL is claiming that they're going to have a thorough investigation into this situation. I'm not so sure how I feel about that, simply based on the relationship that the Patriots owner has with the commissioner of the NFL, with Roger Goodell. At the end of the day, I feel like this is a team, this is a franchise that is so arrogant in terms of their assumption that they can get away with whatever they want to because of the success that they've had. And it really is sad to look at this and come to the realization that nothing will likely happen to this franchise of any real consequence. These guys were caught filming the Cincinnati Bengals sideline, and their excuse was they were doing a documentary on their advanced scouting. Whoever asked for a documentary on an advanced scout? I don't recall there being any demand, any kind of fascination with advanced scouts. And it is evident when watching the video that these guys are in a panic because they know they've been caught. They're offering to destroy the evidence that they're cheating right there on the video. And these guys from the Bengals security team, they know it. It's laughable to them. It's laughable to these guys. Now let's see. I want to see. I'm pretty sure that there's some more. Don't see it there, but here. Let's just go back and I'm going to try and play that portion. All right. Yeah, right here.
But I can delete this right here for you. The damage is done, my friend. No, it isn't, because we deleted it.
I mean, he said, I can delete this right here for you. I can delete it. And the Bengal security, laughter. The damage is done, my friend. Patriots videographer. No, it isn't, because we can delete it. That is just a clear implication of wrongdoing by the Patriots videographer, because even if he didn't know that he couldn't do that, being is that you feel like being is that you don't look at it as something that was, if it's not insidious, if it's not something that is being done with malicious intent, then you wouldn't be offering to delete it. You'd be like, oh, my bad. Well, we'll just film over here then. We were told to film this way, and we don't believe it to be that it's for any reason in particular outside of getting more video footage for our documentary. So we'll just film elsewhere. And, when we're editing the video for the documentary, we can just edit that part out because we know now that we really can't use it. But you're offering to delete it as we speak. And if you listen further, they get a little panicky about it. Once it's gone, it's gone. I can't get that footage back. There's no way I can get that footage back. I'm being honest with you. I mean, that's all you need to hear. I'm being honest with you. And I don't have a computer to blah, blah, blah. Once this card hits, that's it. Yeah, I don't see the advanced scout in any of these videos they're shooting. I mean, again, guys, is it any more clear? When you don't have anything to hide, you don't try to compromise evidence that proves otherwise. So in this situation with the New England Patriots, with these videographers who are working under Kraft Productions, which is the owner of the team, his production company, they try to hide behind these simple but vague details that they think kind of insulates them from any further probing into whether or not that they're doing this to get an advantage. But at the end of the day, I really feel like this video is pretty damning. It says a lot based on what these guys are saying, based on how they're acting. They know for damn sure. They know what they're doing is wrong. They know it. There's no way that you couldn't. There's no way you couldn't see that as them trying to cover their tracks, them trying to put themselves, get themselves out of trouble. And, the NFL needs to come down hard on this shit. It needs to come down hard on it because, look, you can say, and I know Patriots fans out there will blast me and anybody else who comes after the Patriots. But let's be real for a second. You ask any NFL player, you ask any NFL executive, you ask any NFL team, how do you feel about the Patriots? Ask them off camera. Ask them off the record. I guarantee you get the same answer from everybody. Yeah, they win a lot of championships, but they're cheaters. They're cheaters. Deflategate, Spygate 1, and now Spygate 2.0. That's where we're at. They got away with it. They got away with it in 2007. $500,000 in a first-round draft pick or $1 million, it doesn't even matter. That's nothing for them. Bob Kraft could have easily paid that money right back to Bill Belichick after he paid the fine. Easily enough. Easily enough. And, it just kind of goes back to the whole thing that, when you have an organization like the Patriots with as much success that they've had, these guys become arrogant and now they see themselves as above the rules that the NFL has set. And because they know that they're not going to have to face the harshest of consequences. Tom Brady was part of a scandal in deflating balls to give themselves an advantage, a decisive advantage over another team. And he got a 4-game ban. Look, I respect Tom Brady. I know the guy's a freaking, he's a freaking animal, and his career does speak to that. But at the same time, he is not squeaky clean in any of this. He knows what's going on. He is their franchise quarterback and has been for 20 years. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows exactly what tricks of the trade they're trying to use. So it's to me, it's nonsense that these guys continue to do these things and not be punished with the same ferocity that another player will be punished for something half as harsh. You know, and this is a totally different kind of comparison, but you look at Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's situation, he almost threatens the life of a player by swinging a helmet at his head during the course of a game, and that warrants a suspension for the rest of the season because of, you know, what appeared to be at the time malicious intent. You know, Myles Garrett can say whatever he wants about there being, you know, racial slur thrown. Nobody heard about that until your appeal. But this guy's missing an entire, you know, the entire rest of the season, and potentially could be missing next season and part of next season as well, as his suspension is indefinite. Josh Gordon just got popped for, I believe it was performance enhancing. I think I saw somewhere where that it was substance abuse, and I saw somewhere else where it was performance enhancing. But he failed the test. He has now been suspended indefinitely because of a personal decision that affects his personal his ability to be a player out on the field, but is a personal consequence that he's facing. Tom Brady was complicit in a scandal that directly affects the fairness and the level, the level playing field, the integrity of the game itself, the actual integrity of the football game, the integrity of the brand, the credibility of the actual NFL itself was tarnished by this team on multiple occasions. And the longest suspension we have seen has been 4 games. Look at what happened to Sean Payton in New Orleans because of Bountygate. Doug, what was his name? Doug, the defense coordinator for the Saints at the time. I think Doug Williams. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was his name. He was actually our defensive coordinator in Jacksonville before he. I think after New Orleans, he came to Jacksonville and was our defensive coordinator. No, I'm sorry. Before that, before he went to New Orleans, he was in Jacksonville as our D coordinator. But this guy, an entire football season for putting bounties on players, something that was that affected the integrity of the game itself. Sean Payton and Doug Williams, both year-long suspensions from football. Team heavily fined. Both the head coach and the D coordinator heavily fined because they actually affected the integrity of the sport by introducing a system that promoted injuring of players for money. They a direct assault on the integrity of the sport. Greg Williams, thank you. Greg Williams. I don't know why I was thinking Doug. Greg Williams. Greg Williams was the defense coordinator for the Saints during Bountygate. So here you have 2 situations of similar effect on the integrity of football itself. But you have 2 completely polar opposite reactions in terms of consequence from the NFL. You have a full season suspension for a head coach and a defense coordinator on one end. You have a $500,000 fine, a first-round pick, and that's just in the first scenario of cheating. And you have a 4-game suspension in the second scenario of cheating for Tom Brady and for the Patriots as an organization. And now here we are. Here we are, 12 years after the first Spygate, and we have officially entered into Spygate 2. And I hope the NFL, I don't have so much faith that they will, but I hope that the NFL digs deep into this, digs deep, because I'm sure there's more there's more going on than we know. And I'm sure it's not just limited to their little advanced scout documentary. And I really feel like the NFL needs to send a message to the Patriots. At some point, they're going to have to. Because look, the whole run, this whole dynasty run that the Patriots have been going through over the last 10 years, I feel like that most people feel like that's coming to an end. But I really feel like there needs to be a new standard set in how the NFL is going to handle these kind of situations where you're actually impugning on the integrity of the sport. Failing a drug test doesn't impugn on the integrity of the sport. Getting in a fight on the field and swinging a helmet, while violent and deserved of strict reaction, does not impugn on the integrity of the sport. But definitely the filming, definitely the deflating of balls, these things are assaults on the sport itself. Because how long have these things been going on, and to what extent have they been have they been playing games where they have a undeniable advantage outside of the fact that they're the Patriots and they're a team that continues to find more and more ways to win? They also, on top of that, have a stacked deck. They have a stacked deck. We got a chat here from random person. You need to uphold your own rules and standards. Absolutely. I 100% agree. You got to uphold. You got to at least be consistent in how you deal out the punishment that comes with the standards that you set, and when people break them. And I don't think anyone can argue that the Patriots they're not punished the same as other teams. When teams do bad things, they're punished. But the Patriots' punishments aren't nearly as stern as what you see with other squads. So, once again, like I said, something has to be done strong. Has to be strong. Can't keep letting them just do these things and get things that equate to slaps on the wrist. Slaps on the wrist. And I see a couple of comments in the chat talking about death penalties and stuff like that for the Patriots. Yeah, well, I think honestly, obviously it's not gonna, you're not gonna shut down Patriots football for a season, but I do believe that there needs to be a season-long ban on somebody. If when they go through this probe, they find more dirt and they find out more information that just kind of leads them down the path of the Patriots just being seen more and more as cheaters. Now, I'm going to go through this article here that kind of goes into it a little bit more real quickly to kind of bring this whole thing full circle. Oh, come on. Don't do that to me. All right, about to say, don't give me no stupid paywall. But I'm going to share this with you guys. Let you guys take a look at this article with me. This is coming out of the Wall Street Journal. It's coming out of the Wall Street Journal. Spygate 2.0, why this perplexing Patriots cheating scandal is so tense. Any punishment that comes New England's way could produce a new showdown between football's premier franchise and the commissioner. And I'm going to try to be quick with this, so bear with me, guys. We're going to go through it, and then I'm going to give my comments and my thoughts on it. This is just, this is in the last 3 hours out of the Wall Street Journal. It says New England Patriots easily dispatched the Cincinnati Bengals 34-13 on Sunday, and they probably didn't need to cheat to do it. But the NFL is investigating whether they did just that after a baffling sequence a week earlier when someone credentialed on behalf of the Patriots was caught taping the field from the press box during the Bengals-Browns game in violation of league rules. That's first and foremost, in violation of league rules, which means there needs to automatically be punishment. And at that rate, when you got people videotaping from the press box, that these are things that are okayed by the people at the top of the food chain within the organization. The situation is in many ways silly. Why, of all teams, will the Patriots have done this against the lowly Bengals? But the ramifications are potentially explosive because of long-standing tensions between the team and the league over this very topic. Once again, you ask anybody in the league, what is their problem with the Patriots? They'll say they're cheaters. That's because the Patriots have been accused of cheating before. Those accusations have resulted in fines, Tom Brady's suspension, and the forfeiture of draft picks. But not all of those moments have been the same. They have included clear violations, completely unsubstantiated ones, and others so contentious that the situation resulted in a destroyed cell phone and physics debates. Physics debates. Years later, the phrase Deflategate is still taboo in Foxborough because New England executives still maintain that the team and Tom Brady were railroaded by the NFL's investigation of that situation. The fallout from those previous investigations has both bestowed a queasy reputation on the greatest dynasty in the modern NFL history and strained relationships between that same team and the league. Now the Patriots' history in this space will be considered when doling out any potential punishment, which is according to the league's commissioner. Of course, Roger Goodell said, that's a factor. It absolutely has to be a factor. Look at it's like you can't be a criminal going into court and you have a 10-year rap sheet and you think the judge isn't going to consider that when he sentences you for your latest offense. He's going to look at everything you've done, and you may get even a harsher sentence or judgment because your history it only speaks to consistent behavior that skirts the law. And this is the same situation with the Patriots. Consistent behavior that skirts the rules of the NFL. Everybody else is playing by these rules that we know of, but you guys aren't. You continue not to. So how is it supposed to be handled? You know what I mean? Like, come on. Hit him with the hammer. Finally. The situation arose during the December 8th game between the Bengals and the Browns in Cleveland, a week before New England and Cincinnati were set to play. The Patriots made a request to send a video crew to film its advanced scout at the game for a feature called Do Your Job. Ironic. Which shows the life of team staffers. The Browns approved that request. The Bengals weren't informed that it would be happening. But the controversy arose when the same 3-person video crew was seen shooting the field during the game from inside the press box, a violation of league rules because that tape could be used to decode a team's sideline signals. And again, this is something that, Patriot fans will argue against this until they're blue in the face. Every team does this. No, every team doesn't do that because it's like 1 + 1 = 2. You get the signals, you get the formations. What does that equal? 1 + 1 = 2. Now you can decipher their entire playbook. You can decipher exactly what plays are being run out of what formations, out of what substitution packages that'll help you determine what defenses they're running. And you have an undeniable advantage over them because of it. undeniable advantage. And it's unbelievable that after getting caught back in 2007, now we're looking 12 years later, they get caught again. You know what that means? It means for 12 years, they've been doing it still. This isn't like they just started doing it again with the Bengals. They have been doing it. They've been doing it for 12 years since the fact. They just hadn't gotten caught until last week. People familiar with the The Patriots video crew overstepped its bounds by shooting the field, but said that this production was completely independent of the football operation. Coach Belichick said he had no knowledge of it. What is he going to say? Oh, yeah, I knew about it. Of course. People familiar with the matter said New England violated NFL rules, but out of stupidity, not malice. Okay, you don't win this many Super Bowls. You don't win these many playoff games being stupid. So it's hard for me to believe that an organization that is considered the premier organization in the NFL is so incompetent as to not be able to understand the rules of videotapes and video to understand the rules of videotaping teams, and how, knowing the trouble that they've been in, that they wouldn't have a full understanding, 100% understanding of what they can and cannot do. Bill Belichick used the excuse that he didn't know when they got caught in 2007. That's not an excuse that can be used in 2019, knowing their past. Unbelievable. People familiar with the matter said that they did it out of stupidity, not malice. The video crew, they say, wanted to get tape of what the scout is looking at on the field, but had no intention of zeroing in on the Cincinnati coaches. Still, the Bengals saw what was happening and brought it to the NFL's attention. Come on, guys, a Bengals staffer said in the video of the incident. I don't see the advanced scout in this footage. From there, the situation had a number of bizarre angles into answering a question that essentially boils down to, was the video segment a Trojan horse for the Patriots to film the Bengals sideline? People have understandably scoffed at this idea. Although the Patriots were mired in a skid entering Sunday's game, having lost 3 of their last 5 games, it would be oddly perplexing if they chose to whip out a maneuver like this against the Cincinnati Bengals, the team with NFL's worst record. Moreover, they would have been cheating in plain sight. The Patriot scout was sitting in a press box in full view of not just the media, but also Bengals staffers who were sitting directly in front of them. It's illogical to think Bill Belichick could have been behind the plan, said one of the people. Opposing executives have varied reactions to the situation. One described it as a simple mistake and praised New England's in-house content team as one of the best in the business for its ability to develop original features, and another viewed it as blatant subterfuge. And the skeptics who raised eyebrows did so because of what the Patriots had been accused of before. Absolutely. Look at this picture. But it says here, we all know about 2007. I'm not going to go back through that part. It says the problem for the Patriots wasn't so much the money or draft pick that they had to give up, but the lingering stink. Not long afterward, unsubstantiated accusations arose that the team had videotaped the Rams in a walkthrough before the Super Bowl years earlier. There was no evidence of that allegation, and the newspaper that published it later issued a retraction. But the Patriots had a problem nonetheless. Increasingly, they were viewed as pervasive cheaters, even when it wasn't true. That narrative stuck, said another person familiar with the circumstances. It stuck to them because this game of football, and in the NFL specifically, the competition is so unbelievably high. The level of competition is so intense that to win in the NFL, to win even one game, is not a sure bet. We've seen it happen where teams have not won a single game in a season. To win one single game is the first game that I ever won as a starter in my second year. When I got to the locker room after that game, I was stupid exhausted. And my body hurt like it never had hurt before. I was so sore in the days following that game. But because I left everything I had on the field and we beat the Colts in Indianapolis. It's so hard to win a game in this league. For you to not even have a chance to win because the team you're going against has taken advantage of the rules and has cheated, for you to not even have a chance in hell because of that, it completely destroys the integrity of the sport itself. So when you get caught doing something like this, yes, you'll be labeled. You'll be labeled because not only did you cheat, but you're winning championships based on these types of things. You're winning championships. You're getting all kinds of acclaim. You're getting all kinds of endorsements. Your franchise is being lifted up on the basis of a false narrative. You are not a true champion. You're a cheater. Now we move on to Deflategate. That's when Tom Brady was accused of ordering the deflation of footballs to enhance his grip on the ball prior to the 2014-2015 AFC Championship game against the Indianapolis Colts, which the Patriots won 45-7. The resulting investigation produced a lengthy court battle and made every football fan have unusually strong opinions about gaseous physics. Eventually, Brady was suspended for 4 games. The Patriots gave up 2 draft picks, and New England was fined $1 million. That, in and of itself, isn't even close to what happened to the New Orleans Saints. But years later, the bitterness over that investigation hasn't dissipated. The Patriots' key decision makers still feel that there was no evidence that the footballs were tampered with, and the league directed an investigation with the intent of finding them guilty no matter what. The Patriots are 11-3. The Bengals are 1-13. But the contentious history is why any punishment that comes New England's way from a game that resulted in a snoozy regular season blowout could produce a new showdown between the football's premier franchise and the commissioner. So there you have it. There you have it. I just, again, we have to wait until we get more information about what else is going on in terms of this situation. But it's mind-boggling for a player to look at this and say nothing wrong there, because we know there's something wrong with it just by paying attention to how these guys, the mannerisms that these guys, or the attitude that these guys had, and just the panicked nature that they had as soon as these Bengals staff members came and addressed the situation. And like I said, it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. And, people, Patriots fans are going to say Brady is GOAT. Look at, here we go. Let's take a look at these chats. Jack JW. I love this guy. Brady is GOAT, no debate. And, I'll be honest. It's hard to argue against that based on production on the field to a certain extent. In the respect that Tom Brady is probably the greatest quarterback in terms of being able to rally a team and come back from any deficit. Yeah, I'll say he is the GOAT. I like, and there's no greater example of it than that game against against the Falcons in the Super Bowl. But I can easily put an asterisk by that and say, but were they cheating? What did they have on Atlanta that allowed them to, in the second half, utterly crush any momentum that Atlanta had built after the first half of the game? What were they, did they have people in press box or in the crowd filming from certain angles to get signals, to get substitutions, and then, try and decipher those in real time to give them an opportunity to get back in the game? There are so many questions that you can start to ask to put a cloud, to build a doubt, to build some doubt around what's going on in New England that allows them the opportunity to come back in some of these games they come back in. You can build that cloud of doubt just because when you look at these things and you look at the situations where they get caught doing things, it puts them in a negative light. And Mike says, he's asking Mike, who's your team? Let's see here. Let me take a little bit let me take a little look at this. Little look at here at the chats, see what guys are talking about. Sith Lord Dento says Mark Butt Fumble Sanchez is the GOAT. That's funny. Jack says, "Hey Uche, can I buy your jersey?" Hey, I got plenty of jerseys. I can sell you one. And again, just to kind of go back into, this topic, just to kind of bring this kind of full circle in the last few minutes of the podcast. Appreciate you, random person. Random person says his lunch break is over, but it was fun to listen in. Appreciate you listening in, buddy. Make sure you smash that like button. Everybody, make sure you smash that like button. Let's keep this thing going for the last few minutes here. I'm going to bring this to this whole thing full circle. But look, at the end of the day, you can't deny the championship titles that the New England Patriots have, because it does. You can't say that these incidents absolutely give them the win in any game, because football is more than just them being able to film and know what plays you're running. They still have to stop it. They still have to be able to score. True enough. That's the nature of the game. But whoa, we got somebody in here saying, how much for an autographed jersey? It's funny. I actually have an autographed framed jersey that, hey, you offer the right price, you might be able to get it. I would say if you're seriously interested in buying my jersey, which, I don't have a problem. I've got plenty of them, or I've got enough of them to still have one if I did sell it. Just shoot me a message. I'll put my email here in the chat. If you're seriously interested, then we can talk about it. But it really does just put a huge asterisk next to the level of success that the Patriots have had, because now there's doubt that can be thrown on everything that they have accomplished as a franchise. It doesn't take it away. You can't take away the rings. Can't take away the championships. Can't take away the hard work that it took for them to get there and to get the wins. But you absolutely can draw doubt on the integrity of those championships because of repeated scandals and violations, and then the disdain that the franchise shows towards anyone who doesn't look at them as a squeaky clean, premier franchise that has never, cheated or even attempted to cheat. If you're not looking at them from that scope, the same scope that their fans look at it, then they have a certain level of disdain for you as a fan, for you as a media member, for you as a franchise. But it can't be that we're all wrong and we're all just haters when we come out and say that the New England Patriots are cheaters. Because there's not another team that we can look at and point to that has been repeatedly caught violating rules the way that they have. And honestly, there's not another franchise. You look at the Saints situation and you can say, yes, they broke rules, but they did not give themselves an advantage with the rules that they broke. They just gave themselves incentives. The team gave an incentive to hurt players, which does affect the integrity of football, but it doesn't give them an undeniable advantage before the ball's even kicked off. And that is what you have with the Patriots. And that is such a huge difference because, again, you have the teams that they've played against, the teams that have lost to them, they were at a distinct handicap. Distinct and measurable handicap against the Patriots that would take twice the effort to overcome, that would take an unknown X factor and variable to give them a chance at even winning. And I mean, that came in the form of the Giants being able to pull off those miracle moments against them in the Super Bowl, or we may be sitting here talking about a franchise that has 8 Super Bowls potentially based in unfair cheating that gives them the advantage and the bragging rights of being the most utterly successful franchise in all of sports. But again, like I said, these are things that all can be drawn, that all can be pulled down into doubt based on what they have done and the scandals that they have gone through. So that's going to bring this podcast to an end, guys. I really appreciate each and every one of you out there. Jack JW, if you're dead serious on trying to get one of my jerseys, hit up my email. I actually have been very, I've been thinking about doing, getting some of my signed memorabilia and maybe putting those up for guys who are wanting to maybe do a super chat bid off, something like that. See if you guys want to buy some of the stuff I got. I got signed Fred Taylor jersey, game jersey, actual game worn, on the field worn jersey that I have framed up. I got, a couple other things. I got some gloves that I wore in games that are signed. I got some shoes that I wore in games that are signed. So that may be something that we move toward. I was wanting to kind of wait until the audience built a little bit more before I got into those types of things. But I definitely would like to, do some giveaways, stuff like that. But for the bigger stuff like jerseys, those are going to come with a little bit of a price tag. But, I'm more than open to speaking about that type of stuff with guys who are serious about it. But again, really appreciate everybody who's been on the podcast. Make sure you stay tuned. I'm going to be doing a live stream probably this Thursday from Primetime Sports Talk on Facebook. I'm going to see if there's a way to connect that into YouTube as well so that I'm going live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So we'll see about that, and we'll see how we can get that set up. But I really appreciate everybody being on the broadcast. Appreciate you guys in the chat. Look forward to seeing you guys again on Thursday. But this has been Lineman Life from your observant lineman, Uche Nwaneri. Appreciate all of you guys, and we will catch you in the next video. Peace.